Realtors of Reddit, what is the strangest, craziest, and or most awkward thing you have ever encountered at a showing? Was a realtor in upstate NY back in grad school. Worst house I ever saw was pretty junky inside, with paths through the garbage which was at least a foot deep in each room. Worse, we looked in the attic. We found that there had been a hole for years, allowing bats, birds, etc. access. The channels between the attic beams were completely full of guano, and we realized why the rest of the house was dusty. Every time they slammed a door, everything was sprinkled with a new layer of bat crap. Shikaka. I'm a realtor in California. A home inspector told me a story about finding a human hand in a house. He started out his inspection in the kitchen and moved into the bathroom. He lifted up the lid on the toilet and immediately saw a hand floating in it. He called the cops and said, "I'm finished here, not looking anywhere else." The cops came and found pieces of a dismembered body throughout the house. Apparently it was some kind of Mexican cartel drug-related killing. Needless to say, the buyer was none too happy and ended up cancelling the purchase. We were doing the pre-purchase inspection. Noticed a kid in the backyard near some woods kneeling and digging with a shovel. We walked over to say hi and see what was up. He turns and says, "Get the frick out of my face." We decide it's best to leave him be. Turns out the home sale was due to divorce. He was the son of the sellers and had just come to get the last of his things out of the garage. Somehow had run over his dog with his Jeep and decided to bury the dead dog in the backyard of the house we were buying. I felt bad for the kid. Sometimes it is just an especially bad kind of day. I scheduled a showing at a property occupied by renters. They were fully aware of the showing. I talked to the husband directly, showed up with my client and his 2-year-old. The whole family was there, husband and 2 kids nonchalantly watching TV in the living room. The wife, however, was laying on the bed in the master bedroom, door open, watching TV, in her lace bra and panties. As we walk by, she just looks over and goes, "Come on in and take a look around." We noped out of the house immediately. I later talked to the listing agent. We were not the first to lodge a complaint. Not a realtor anymore. I was looking at a multifamily with a realtor I use a lot, and we were meeting a contractor I use. He showed up looking kind of pale. He kept talking really fast, and then just said he had to go to the bathroom. Of course the place had been winterized since it was vacant. No water. He took the smelliest dump ever. I swear. He must have had a touch of the bird flu or something. We just left after that. Hope they didn't have trouble selling it with frozen diarrhea in the toilet. A contractor should really know how to fill the top of the toilet to get it to flush once. I work for a brokerage and we manage about 1,000 units in our city. Weirdest showing by far had to be when I was going to a nice part of town to show a 2,200 SQFT 2-story home to what I thought was a single mother. Turns out her and her friend are moving in together and they both brought their children. 6 kids. All of them running around screaming, slamming doors, locking each other in closets and the like, and the moms are both just ignoring it. But wait, there's more. About 10 minutes into the moms exploring the house, one of them gets a phone call and has a shouting match with what I assume to be her baby daddy. This then proceeds to her locking herself in the upstairs master bedroom, noisy kids, for 15 minutes. All I could do was twiddle my thumbs and wait. Yeah, that was fun. Checked in at one of my listings. The owner had moved out and the house was vacant except he left a rifle and a catheter bag of urine on the kitchen floor. Free gun and refreshments. I'm currently taking a real estate course to acquire a license. My instructor went to show a house once and found another realtor murdered inside. I'm incredibly curious to hear what happened now. I showed a large place that was tenant occupied, but there are a lot of tenants and apparently not all of them received the notification. There are folks everywhere in the building. I'm up on the 3rd floor with my clients when I open a door. It turned out that this is a door to a bedroom, and inside are 2 folks furiously, but very quietly, freaking. I apologized and they were like, "Nah, it's cool, come on in." We noped out of there right quick. Not a realtor, but had an interesting experience with a realtor while we were house shopping. We were in a tight market where if the house was purchased, it was likely tenants would be evicted, so I'm not sure how much of this was intentionally done to deter us from purchasing the house, but all in one showing. Food all over the kitchen. like dishes not done for months. About 15 people or so hanging out drinking and some drugged out. This was a split level house and there was a guy clearly jacking it under a blanket on the mid level. This prevented me from going further to view the basement, as getting that far was when we turned around. At the same time I tried to go downstairs. Husband went upstairs and found a poop room. The residents had decided a toilet was not necessary. Keep in mind this was a house listed at $500,000. Our realtor apologized profusely. She actually contacted the listing realtor to make him aware, but his hands were pretty much tied. He said he let them know when there was a showing, but they have no real obligation to cooperate. Hopefully the owners eventually got enough ammo to evict and relist, but I shudder just thinking about living there. Not a realtor, but once I was having one show me apartments for college. The realtors are even able to show you apartments that are currently occupied, as it is understood by the tenant that the realtor can show during certain hours. We walked in to look at one that was occupied and we could hear the shower running, but he said we would look around anyway. There was a picture of the girl that was living there, and the realtor saw it, said she's hot, and made a creepy gesture like he was going to go get in the shower with her. She never knew that we were in her place. I'm going to post this for my mother because she doesn't read it. So she was at a showing at the end of the day. Nothing too special, just showing this home to a single guy. Couple bedrooms, bath, garage, nothing special. He asked to see the garage. Now according to her that is typically just open the door and look in and that's all. The guy motions to enter, so my mother heads in to show off the car hold in front of him. The guy moves in behind her, shuts the door, jiggles the handle to make sure he locked it. It was. Mum nopes right the frick out of the side door the instant she saw him jiggle the handle and straight leaves. Carries mace with her now. I had absolutely no idea that realtors were targeted by violent offenders so often until reading this thread. Terrifying stuff. Glad your mom got out safely. Realtor for 14 years here. A few months ago I went into a house in a nice area, but there was obviously no maintenance done on the outside, which was unusual for the area. We went in and there were piles of stuff everywhere. Stacks and stacks everywhere you look. The place was a mess. My clients were saying how much of a mess it was and that they can't believe someone was living here. We went downstairs and there was this 80-year-old guy sitting in a corner on a desktop computer. I don't even know if he knew we were there. It was weird because whenever I enter a house, I always ring the bell and yell hello when I enter a home. My clients were so embarrassed they left without seeing the basement. The house is still unsold. I don't know if that guy is still in the basement. Not a realtor, but my mother used to be one. She had a friend, Bob, who died of breast cancer. Bob had the worst, most bizarre luck with clients. These are two I remember hearing. Was showing a very old, 1930s, fixer-upper. Water started leaking onto her and her client's head. Upon investigation it wasn't water. Rather, it was a stray dog peeing upstairs. That's right, all three of them had just been peed on. Was showing a very nice home to a very young couple. In the foyer when a New York-sized rat dragged its poison body by its front paws to the center of the room to hiss at them once, then promptly die. Also, not Barb related, my mother was once trying to sell a house that had renters in it who didn't want to go. They got evicted but kept squatting. Finally they left a small surface-to-air missile on the front porch to scare her. My mother brings me to make sure it's a dud. I was 15. I know, RA said narcissists. Needless to say I now own a small, empty Sam. Needless to say I now own a small, empty Sam. Dude kick us. I'm not in the business anymore, but did hundreds of showings. I'm kinda jealous of some of the weird stories here because my weirdest doesn't approach them. My mild story is that one of my vendors used to leave $50 on the kitchen bench to pay the cleaner. They were childless professionals. Nobody home during the day, and while showing a man through he claimed it was his and that he must have dropped it. I didn't let him take it but did go through the polite pantomime of searching the whole house for the $50 he was sure he dropped. Other than that, the weirdest showing I did was for a house with 3 chain smokers. The walls and roof were yellow, bordering on brown in places, with smoke stains. It made me want to retch. Maryland realtor here. When I first started I showed a house in West Baltimore that had the weirdest bathroom. The listing on the internet only had one picture, so my client was curious because it looked good online. We came to the showing, got inside the house and the smell was nauseating. We kept checking out the place until we found the master bathroom. This bathroom was the bathroom of the Boom Boom Mansion. Zebra print walls, zebra print floors, large hot tub in the middle, 4 stripper poles in the corner of each room, but no toilets. Later I found out that it was a house used as a swingers club in Baltimore. Needless to say, my client and his wife did not put an offer. Okay, not me but a good friend of mine was showing a house. No big deal. He's a listing agent, so he has keys and is under contract to show the house. He tries to call the owners. No answer. Tries both cell numbers on the way over. Still no answer. He shows up at the house just as the couple is pulling up. House looks empty. They go in knocking, announcing, literally yelling, that they were coming in. They tore the whole downstairs, moved to the upstairs and are looking through bedrooms, talking, laughing, commenting about the house and such. They get to the end of the hall, open the double doors to the bedroom, and there's the owner. The owner is a police officer, in full uniform, laid out on top of the bed in the master bedroom. He's asleep with one of those masks covering his eyes. The broker and the couple see him about the same time and they all freeze, standing there for a few very long awkward seconds of total stunned silence. Needless to say, they all turned around and left very quietly. And no, they didn't buy the house. Went looking at a house with my realtor last year. Was going through the basement and noticed a very large orange extension cable bundled up in the rafters and going up a hole we deduced was the upstairs bathroom. Went looking and found a power strip zip tied to the side of the sink right next to the toilet. A room full of dolls. Those ones with the glass eyes that look into your soul. They were all arranged to be looking at the door when you walked in. Was showing some people a townhouse in a half sketchy part of town. The other realtor had the place on a lockbox, so they weren't there. Got the key, knocked, yelled hello inside. No response. So we go in and start looking around. When we hear a gruff sounding guy yelling from upstairs asking who's there. The guy was a shift worker and never got the message from his realtor. A fat, half asleep, half naked 50-year-old man wondering who was in his house was what we got on that one. Foreclosure sales are often super depressing. People down on their luck and in a tough spot in general. They often leave stuff behind. Saw one last year where they abandoned a bunch of kids' toys and school projects. Generally you'd be surprised how people live. Filth and chaos in a neat little house. That big gorgeous mansion you drive by all the time is probably only half furnished, and condos apartments almost always have way too much furniture in them. Not a realtor, but when I was in 8th grade my parents were looking for a house, and so my sister and I spent many Sunday mornings being dragged from showing to showing. I will never forget this house, in the middle of a nice suburb. From the outside it looked like it had all these big windows around the front of the house. You could see the curtains were closed. We walked in and there were no windows anywhere. They were all covered with drywall and painted to match the rest of the room. There was a line of electrical outlets around the base of the entire room and in a solid line up one wall to the ceiling. Upstairs was the same situation. All the windows were a facade and the master bedroom had a toilet in one corner and a shower in the opposite corner. No separation of any kind. Same carpet all around the shower and toilet. You could tell the realtor was super uncomfortable. She didn't really say anything, just kind of led us around in silence. Needless to say, we did not buy that house. Sounds like it was a grow house. I'm a realtor in California. I had a client who had a PhD in neuroscience or something of the sort. I was over at his place on a Friday night finalizing the details of a counteroffer for a house we had put an offer in on the day before. He opened a bottle of wine and by the time we were done the bottle was gone. This was a 30 minutes visit. I had an open house scheduled the next day for his home. He was supposed to leave for a business trip that same day, so I had expectations of his home being empty and ready for an open house. Since the counteroffer had marks all over it, I took it home to fill out a fresh form with the details he had agreed upon, then sent it over that same night for electronic signature. We had kept in touch that night via texting and he assured me he would have the counteroffer signed by the morning along with a copy of proof of funds. The next morning the counteroffer wasn't signed and I had no proof of funds to submit. When I left him the previous night he was obviously stressed out about the whole situation. I showed up the next day to prepare for the open house and went to open the door. It was unlocked. I immediately got a bad feeling. This client did have a suicidal history and I immediately thought the worst. I walked inside and the place was a mess. His packed bags for the business trip were still in the bedroom and there were 2 more empty bottles of wine. I then started a search of the property expecting to find my client unconscious or dead. I checked under beds and in closets. I couldn't find him anywhere. However, along with the empty wine bottles and glasses and trash everywhere, I did find a small pile of crystal M. Needless to say, I cancelled the open house. TLDR. Showed up to host an open house. Door was unlocked. Found crystal M. It's super nice that you were worried about his well-being, but as I read I just kept thinking the guy was going to drunkenly bum rush you from out of nowhere. I'm glad that didn't happen. In South Central Los Angeles, I was attacked by a skeleton-looking sea-kid with a knife, who broke in and started living in a room. She was yelling at us to get out of her home. Another time I entered a home with newspapers and mail about 4 feet deep throughout the entire home. The walls and decor were still very well taken care of, but wow, was it a weird sight, especially since there was no foul odor or signs of hoarding. Not a realtor, but we were with ours when viewing a home. Someone called and the answering machine picked up. The caller proceeded to invite the couple to a key party. I'm a realtor in Chicago. I took my clients to see a foreclosure. The house had been completely emptied out by the bank. There was a wall in the basement that had birthday scribblings all over it that made it clear the former owners had a teenage daughter. So we walk into the mechanical room and we're checking out the furnace. On top of it, I was trying to figure out what this tall red pipe was for. It took us a good minute or two to realize it was a bong, probably left by the daughter, hiding in plain sight. I've told this story before, but shadowing my brother a few years ago, he had to do a few apartment inspections, and in the middle received a phone call to come to an apartment. The guy on the phone didn't say why, he just said to come. When we got there, a bunch of workers were outside with a 1,000-mile stare on. The reason was that the last 2 men living there were septic truck drivers, and had filled the place with crap. Lampshades, sinks, cupboards, sconces, drawers, toilets, toilet tops, beds, closets, all covered in a layer of crap. It seemed that they wanted to drop the lease early, but weren't allowed to buy the apartment lease. Within the first year you have to live out the full year, I think. So this was apparently the next best solution. My brother isn't super violent, but has said that he isn't far removed from murder if he encounters them again. Had another apt inspection story. My freshman apt. The first time I brought my girlfriend up to stay the weekend, my roommates plastered lesbian pee all over my room, but also framed a porno picture in the living room by the TV and fake autographed it about biggest fan. Yada yada. My GF got a good laugh. I took all the pee down from my room. We forgot about the framed pic. The next week the office lady, a maintenance guy and 2 girls came by for a showing. We were relatively clean guys. Showing went fine. But right as they are about to walk out, the office manager sees the framed picture. Oh god. Pornography, and storms out. The girls turn red and follow. The maintenance guy is walking out. Turns around, walks up to the picture, reads the writing, turns to me and says, "Nice," with a big grin. My folks were looking to buy both sides of a duplex near a university so they could rent them out. One side looked fine. Very little work was needed. However, the other side, wow. I will just list the issues. Mind you, this was a 2-bed 1-bath duplex. 1. Had 3 German shepherds. They stayed in the back bedroom, literally, never let out, and they just let them crap on the floor, and they never cleaned the poop up. 2. The boyfriend was out on parole after serving an unspecified amount of time for murder. 3rd degree, I think. 3. The carpet was no longer carpet, but simply matted dirt and crap. 4. The son, 7 or 8, slept on the couch. 5. For months my folks were having to deal with roaches on the good side. They finally realized there were 3 colonies of roaches on the bad side. It was so bad that when the exterminator, one my folks had used for years, who was also training her daughter, started spraying so many roaches, hundreds, then thousands, then hundreds of thousands, the daughter ran to the truck and would not come out. 6. My folks finally were able to evict them for failure to pay, but they were none too happy. Every single wall needed at least one hole patched up. I think my folks put an additional $30,000 or something into that duplex. At least they got it for a pretty cheap price due to the bad side of the duplex. Just a buyer here, but I'll share. Bought a FSBO, no realtors. Both parties were pretty thorough and deal was pleasant. Got to closing and seller had done poor math and misunderstood how much I put on him to close. Write me my check while being very posses off. I took possession the next morning. He and his wife had dumped garbage from one end of the house to the other, including dong pics and other graphic items. I had a full-size truck and we ended up breaking up the garbage and hauling it, 3 truckloads, to the dump. Used to be in real estate investment. Saw some interesting properties in the Milwaukee area. One property that we actually ended up buying was a 9-unit efficiency, so 8 of the units shared 2.5 baths, and 1 unit was the management apartment. 2/1 on the first floor. Apparently the owner didn't tell his tenants, so as I, my partner, and my agent walk in, he tells us to act as insurance agents so tenants don't get an idea. Everyone in this property was very odd. One door swung open, and there was a guy sitting on his bed in the dark, eating spaghettios in a can, watching TV. There was a crack pipe on his table. Another guy, on the 3rd floor, was sitting with his door open, drinking beer. He stared at us as we looked into his 300-feet room and quickly left. We still ended up buying the property because we got it about 60% below asking price. We went to each tenant and said we wanted to redo their carpets and repaint the walls a color of their choosing, and install some AC units in the windows. They all declined. We chose not to renew any leases at the end of their terms, redid the place, and made it student housing. The other fun one was in a property we were flipping in a not so nice area. Our contractor was good at what he did. I told him to get it done and do it well, and we paid a premium. I happened to visit the property while it was being torn up. Had about 6 guys working that day. Perfect timing when a SWAT raid starts next door. A nice big drug bust. By the time the commotion settles down and I get back into our property, everyone working had disappeared. Lost 1 day of work. Thanks MPD. I was looking for a rental during uni and thought I had found an awesome house. The place is huge, and the price was right. Then they show me the room upstairs I would be renting. There is dog crap everywhere. Streaks on the walls, all over the carpet. It's just vile. It looks like they had half-assed tried to clean by throwing a few shirts over some of the bigger piles. The guy didn't even react to it, and just went on talking about the place like the poo wasn't there. I'm a realtor and property manager. This didn't happen during a showing. I had to go check on one of our homes that the tenant hadn't paid their monthly rent for, and when I walked in, the entire place looked like it was being used as a weed distribution factory. There was weed everywhere. Vacuum-packed bags stationed for packaging pounds of weed, and lots of guns. Needless to say, I took off and called the cops. When the cops got out there about an hour later, the whole place had been cleared. There was no evidence left, except for the strong smell of weed. Not a realtor, just bought a house. On one set of showings, we had to bring our 4-year-old daughter along. We get to the last house, a vacant, winterized house, and she says she has to pee. I tell her to hold it. Go through the house. Old, outdated, smelled of smoke, and I'm an outside smoker. We are locking up. Finishing up talking to our realtor when I realize I don't see my daughter. Come around the bushes at the front porch and there she is. Dropped trow and pee in the middle of the front yard. We didn't buy that house. A former co-worker was fed up with losing offers in a high demand area in SoCal. He blamed foreign investors. By chance he saw 4 Asians being shown a house he was interested in and snuck in because the door was unlocked. He just stared them all down and not one word was said due to the language barrier or maybe dramatic effect. He left shortly after and heard the door lock behind him. He was hoping to scare away those potential investors. I was a realtor in San Antonio for a few years. I will never forget showing this one property to a client. It was a potentially beautiful mid-19th century home in need of extensive repair. When I was greeted by the owner, who was easily in his mid-60s, something seemed off. When we started touring the house, I noticed a deaf boy who was under 10 years old. I thought this odd, but tried to play it off in my mind until we reached the master bedroom. The walls were lined with dolls and doll heads. This was bothersome. And then we noticed the extensive collection of men's thongs which adored the posts of his footboard. We immediately left. I used to live in a slum in Los Angeles. Our apartment managers had left us with a broken toilet for upwards of 3 weeks once, and left our neighbors with standing water in their entire unit for a week. The plumber actually thanked us for not covering our own bathroom in crap when he finally showed up. Apparently, other tenants had done exactly that when the company left their toilet broken for long periods of time. Our building manager told me, right before she quit, that one time the management company called her in the morning insisting she show a unit that day. The previous tenants had only moved out the night before, and she argued that they had to clean it and replace the carpet. The company insisted, saying that they'd already scheduled 3 showings, despite knowing the unit wasn't clean. She opened the door and found a blood stain 3 feet wide in the middle of the living room carpet. None of the appointments put in applications. My uncle sold a house to some guy and a while later he shot his wife, was fricked up. Not a realtor, but a home buyer. Went to a house with our realtor early in our process. The place was new to the market but had already been emptied of all the furniture. Apparently some old guy lived there and the place reeked of cigarette smoke, like it had been thoroughly saturated in nicotine over the course of 30+ years. So the realtor starts with her spin. Change the carpets and have it repainted and it'll be good as new. But I knew you would have to rip out the drywall and ceiling to even try to get rid of that smell. But the smell wasn't the awkward bit. The showing got really awkward when I opened a closet and there was a 3 foot tall, 6 foot wide, 3 foot deep pile of old Playboys, Penthouses, and Hustler magazines. More P-mags than I've ever seen in one place. I just laughed because I already knew I wasn't going to take the place. But the realtor just looked at the pile and said, "Some of those are vintage, you could sell them on eBay." Go to admit, that realtor thinks on his/her feet. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.